that the name was James?
Yep.
Or?
Yeah, it just happened, it just happened.
I just heard, I'm just
Yeah.
realizing what's going on.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. The other thing that I wanted to mention is normally, you know, we have Ashley sitting here with us at the table. Well, thanks to to Eric and the Communications Committee and the fact that all of you have agreed that we can take this meeting, Eric came up with the suggestion that why is Ashley having to struggle to make a schedule that works around our finance committee and come and sit here and listen to us talk off subject for hours. It makes it easier for her to go into her office and watch the video afterwards and transcribe from that. She's done a great job. The first one turned out really well from the board. So she is not going to be attending the boards or the finance committee's meetings because she is going to be taking them from home, which means a better schedule for all involved in admin. All right, so the agenda is before you, but before we get too far, I just want to make sure there are no other things on the agenda. Does anybody have anything that they feel we need to add, or?
I have an item that's coming up tomorrow, I think, for discussion. I did not put it in here, and it has to do with the water lilies in Lake Louise.
New business.
So I would like to discuss that tonight.
Okay. Have fun. Water lilies.
Invasive species.
Yes, got it. We'll discuss that more soon. Okay, and then I asked President Brown if he would come and kind of start us off with a little bit. First of all, I'm assuming that the agenda is okay. Aside from that, no one has any others, so if there's no objection, we'll adopt it by acclamation. All right. Mr. Brown.
Minutes? Yeah, don't you?
No, we're gonna
You've
first
done
have
roll
him.
call. You've done
No,
roll
we've
call
done roll
and
call
agenda? Okay,
and
all right.
agenda, so you're up.
Okay. Catch my breath. I
Yeah.
was just bumping into a brand new residence up in Gate 5 and welcoming them to the community.
Or resident.
Resident.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So, you probably have heard that there was an announcement on Saturday. And the announcement, the basic bottom line is dues now, pursuant to state law, are passed as part of the budget, meaning that they are voted on as the budget is voted on. They're not done separately. More detail, we're going to wait until we get some information from our attorney. He's going to help us interpret the bill and see what impacts it has and give us advice on how best to deal with it. I will tomorrow night announce when we're going to have him do that publicly, give us some guidance and whatnot. So I don't want to spoil the beans by breaking that announcement. I'll make it tomorrow, but I will say that if you guys have any questions you would like to have our attorney answer regarding the new statute, pass them to the board. Send them to the board right away, and then we can pass them on to the attorney, and hopefully, he'll do his best to answer them as best as he can, given that this is a brand new statute passed the end of March. There are some questions. Covered that. Okay. There are some questions, though, that particularly I, as a board member, would like to have the Finance Committee take a look at quickly as we go forward. One, does the new law affect our required contribution to reserves? We don't know, but there's some language that makes it look like it might. Obviously, our attorney is going to have a lot to say, but once our attorney has whatever they have to say, then you guys may need to do some thinking. If dues are going to be passed this way, what do you guys have as a recommendation for how to essentially cushion the burden on anybody in the community who's truly needy? be a lot of thinking on that, but I want you to hear what you guys have to say. If anything, if you say, no, we don't have anything, okay, fine. Does this make you all rethink any past recommended priorities for staff or roads? If you want to rethink
Say that
those.
again?
If you have any, okay, these guys in particular, because welcome, thank you for coming back, welcome. These guys have made some awesome and very, very skinflintish recommendations for surf and roads in the past many months. Okay, does this new law change anything? Does it change your recommendation in any way? Sort of in general, what kind of advice would you give to the board for doing immediately? Not just necessarily work, but obviously work is included, but just in general, what would you recommend? And in terms of funding, if we're going to be doing projects, I'd love to get your thoughts on whether or not the board should consider loans, one or more, and when those loans might be taken out. I have gotten much advice over the years from a past treasurer about take loans now while rates are low. Well, what do you guys think? And are loans even appropriate? What do you guys think? That's why you're here, to give us all advice. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer them, but again, I think the bottom line is the only one that I'm really, really certain about, and that is the rules have changed.
Please, go ahead.
Do you have a bill number for?
Yes, SB 6175.
And by the way, I read it Sunday, it's 134 pages.
Right.
It's pretty lengthy, and it's got a lot of interesting things in it that I'm glad that our attorney is looking at it, because
In
I didn't know how to
particular,
answer it.
you'll want to take a look at these two sections. Section 117 and section 326. 117 says basically the new budget approval process that they have created that applies to all new HOAs also applies to all old HOAs. And then 326 is that new budget process, which says budgets include assessments and special assessments. Two separate sections in there. By the way, special assessments can last for as long as the board wants them to last. There's no time limit. It's very explicit. No time limit, and for any obviously good purpose, but they didn't really specify the kind of things you can use it for. Okay. Yeah, what else?
Penny,
I think you answered my question. I was going to ask whether or not it was, the bill was saying whatever process you already have in your CCNRs or your bylaws to approve the budget is what is,
no,
and it's not, it's their
completely
dictating.
supersedes whatever your
So they're dictating.
restricted covenants, bylaws, articles of incorporation, doesn't matter, whatever your documents say, the language that controls is section 326.
And it's 51% of all voting, of all members would have to vote
It's
against the
more
budget.
than 50%, so
Okay.
51% is actually too much.
Got
It's
it.
greater than 50% of all votes allocated have to disapprove.
Got it.
And they also specify and cleared up something that was bugging me. I wanted to bring it up as a bylaw amendment anyway. If the budget doesn't pass, now that the assessments are included in that, we always said that you go back to the prior budget. Well, what if the prior budget didn't have proper assessments? Well, now, because they're all rolled in together, if this current budget doesn't pass, you roll back to the prior budget, which does have assessments in it. Now, for us, in this transition year, that might be a pain. And that might cause some legal hair pulling, but in general, as the years roll on, it's now very clear. If your budget doesn't pass, your assessments don't pass, and your prior assessments and prior budget do continue in place.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rick,
One more question. Recognizing the significance of this event and this new statute, couple things. First, do you anticipate rewrite or modification of the bylaws for next year's AGM to be consistent with the new legal ramifications? And second of all, recognizing that you're expecting legal counsel to come forward with giving us advice on the interpretation of what the statute represents to the community, I think it's a foregone conclusion that the community is very much interested in hearing that type of information, and I think it would be advisable to potentially come up with some kind of document, whether that be from council or board or finance, to explain the ramifications of what this new statute does to us, so that the people have a chance to digest it rather than a bunch of rumors going around and people getting anxious. So I'll ask you.
Two things. I mentioned that our attorney is going to come out and give a description to the board. The reason I mentioned that is because it will be a public thing. The board and the attorney will have the only conversation, but that's why I'm asking for questions. If you have questions, then I'll relay them to the attorney, give him some time to look at them and figure out answers. That will be on public and live streamed, as all board meetings are. And the creation of a document, that's a good suggestion. We have talked along, I would just say broadly along those lines with council, but I think making a summary or translating from legalese into English kind of a document is probably a good idea. I owe an article on this for the views, but I can't say much in that article than I can say now. So that article is not going to be very informative. But the next time something gets put out, yeah, I think that would be very useful.
The only other question would be, and probably directed to you a little bit, Eric, is just what's the PR around this for internal and external to
The board will be
the
worried about that and thinking about that and discussing that with Eric and his committee's input. And I'll just repeat what Eric always says. If you have concepts and ideas about how best to do that, by all means, come to Communications Committee meetings, talk to him, talk to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, with your background, obviously, you might have some idea. I don't say that it'll be perfect, but you might have an idea.
Well, no, I'll have it there.
Well,
That's not it.
if I may make a quick comment about that, whenever any new information becomes available that is as important as this, I think that it's just crucial to get factual information out as broadly.
I know, but I'm going to turn that on. Sorry.
Why didn't you just call Tony? That was so
I think that it's the best for everyone to get as much factual information as broadly distributed as possible, as quickly as possible. And quick doesn't always mean correct. And so we create more problems for everyone by trying to answer things that haven't been fully sussed out.
That's why I kept my mouth shut. I could talk on and on, but I'm not going to.
This is new to all of us.
We don't know
We don't have any
enough to
plan.
speak
Yeah.
to, we don't know enough to be able to make plans. All we know for certain, as Larry said, is things have changed.
Right.
And we don't know the full gravity of that yet, and that's why we're trying to take it as prudently as possible in the understanding of it. I had a community member come to me yesterday, or day before yesterday, and say, well, this goes into effect July 1st, does that mean that our dues automatically increase on July 1st to meet the budget that was approved last year? And, okay.
That's a good question.
That's a great
I have my opinion, but
Well,
that's my
see,
opinion.
all we have is, wow, didn't think of
But
that.
our budget,
But-
our, okay.
And so those are questions that,
Yes.
Point of clarification. We passed a balanced budget, so
We
the
did.
dues currently match the budget that was passed.
That's a good reminder.
that's a good,
Until the SGM, in
That's
which
correct.
case we're going to have to make an adjustment. and
We passed the
revise
balanced
our
budget.
spending
but
plan.
I just wanted to illustrate some of the questions that just come out of the left
Yeah.
field there, that they seem like, wow, that's an interesting.
Luckily, that has an easy answer.
Yeah.
You just gave it, it's already balanced.
But it's, so as much details as we have them as possible
Yeah.
to everybody.
Thank you.
But
Thank you, guys.
Colin, I'm going to just, since you're kind of in the background there, I'm just going to check with you and see if there are any additional questions that, or comments that you might have.
No, I mean, I can't forget everything, bits and pieces, so, I don't have anything to add. I can catch Larry or Eric or someone later on and give any questions answered that I need.
Okay, good. And just a quick overview. One of the things Larry said is we're having our attorney review the Senate bill now to provide us with his evaluation of the specific changes or impacts that the bill might have on how we do business in Sudden Valley, and what changes we might need to initiate. And that there will be a public meeting, and I'll keep all the finance committee meeting members apprised of when that will be, when the attorney will come and actually speak to the board. And if you have questions, yes, get them to Eric, to me, to Larry, to Mitch, to whomever.
Just send them to the
It
board.
sounds like we've still got things to figure out, get clarified, and so, yeah.
Exactly, precisely. Okay, good, thanks. All right, so, thank you, Larry, I appreciate you giving, I knew that this is the big elephant in the room, you know, everybody wants to know about it, and there's just not a whole lot we can say yet, but we're interested in hearing all the news, so.
Breathe, stay calm.
Yeah.
That nothing is going to happen immediately, as far as
Well,
I
and-
know, unless the lawyer says otherwise.
Right, exactly, and the timing is incredible because of the fact that we're just getting ready to go into the budgeting season. So we really need the information as soon as we possibly can in order to make sure we don't do anything that is going to be contrary to the new bill, the budgeting process. All right, so let's next on our approval, we'll just approve the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from March 14, which was our last meeting? No?
Yep.
No? Okay, are there any corrections or additions or changes to those minutes? All right, without objection, then I'm going to say that we are going to approve these by acclamation. And we do have one capital request this evening. Hopefully you have each read the capital request, and any of you who have gone into the admin building lately on the side door will note that the ADA automatic opening door is not automatic anymore. And so it's been broken for a while, and I know Mitch and the staff have been trying to figure out a way to fix it. Can't be fixed quite. I mean, we can fix it, but we've got to buy. We got to buy stuff to do it, and it's a little expensive. So that's what this funding is for. And so first of all, let's have a motion. Could somebody move that we discuss this particular item?
I'll make a
Please,
motion.
thank you, Eric.
I move that we recommend the replacement of the ADA door opener as proposed in this page 8.
Great.
I'll
5121. Okay. Okay, 5121 from Sir. Okay. Do you wish to make any comments, Mitch, before we move? It's pretty much.
It's pretty
Cut and dry.
straightforward. It was kind of intriguing that we called Lindale Glass, we called 5 or 6 door companies, and every one of them said, call Security Solutions Northwest, this is them, we don't do it. And, like, all right, but do you quote it? Well, we'll quote it, but we'll hire them to do it, call them.
Okay.
So we just gave up and went and said, here you have
Which is
to.
the reason why we only have one bid in
Because
here.
everyone said, that's who we're subbing.
Okay.
So, it's a maintenance action, but because of the dollar amount, it's a capital request. And as you all know, that's our 180A door, no steps, and we need it repaired. The openers work, the handles work, but the door doesn't open. So I need a door opener.
Okay, sounds like it's a wiring
The motor burned out.
issue, yes. Okay. All righty, any other comments or questions about this item? Okay, then I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor of approving this ADA door to be changed? Okay, good. We've got unanimous. Okay? Which is 1, 2. All righty, very good. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll call him about it.
Oh, yeah, oh, Colin. Hello, I apologize. Are you okay with the approval of moving forward with the door for ADA?
I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice. Thank you very much, it still is
That's why we-
unanimous.
Would you get him on video, please?
Thank you very much. Okay, next, we're going to go to an audit, an audit update for 2017. So Mitch, do you want to give us a little?
Our audit's finished. This is the audit letter. The auditors, as they have in the past, will be coming in and briefing the board. We have a very, very clean audit.
We do.
We do. We actually have an extremely clean audit.
If you look at the management letter, or I call it the management letter, I don't know, there are other people who call it something else, but on page number 34, there are a bunch of notes in here that talk about all our different reserve funds and all of that, but the letter that we normally get from them that tells us all the things we're doing wrong, and what we need to do, and the steps we need to take, was just as clean as could be. It's really nice. The only thing they're talking about still is our reserve study and making sure that we come up with a plan to fund our reserves and using the new preventive maintenance program to figure out what that amount is going to be to maintain those items. So I was very pleased with the results. It means that all of the things that have ever been recommended by the auditor have now been fixed, and we're a pretty easy company to audit now.
When we get into discussion on capital planning and reserve study update discussion, and you look at the preventative maintenance program and funding analysis discussions and recommendations, you're going to see how that ties directly to the sheet in front of you.
Okay, good. Tony, your question?
Normally we have them come in and do a review with us, but
Yes.
do we need that?
Well, they came in and did a preliminary review with us when they had finished the audit, and they didn't do a formal review, and they told us then there wasn't going to be anything new, and that they felt that they wouldn't need to come back. But they are coming to the board on May 22nd to do a final presentation to the board. So if you wish to be part of that, you can. We normally will also publish the letter in the views so that everybody can see that we're being good. Okay. So thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. Oh,
Let there be.
points! Wow, I didn't realize it was even not quite right.
I do love the summer here.
It's so nice driving in the sunlight rather than the dark.
Yeah. All right, the reserve study update. We had our reserve study updated this year by David Schwint and Associates.
That's
They were the
correct.
ones that did the level 3 last year. This year they did a level 1.
That's correct, which means that they did not come on site, which means that they took the documents we had, we told them what we had already purchased, what we've updated, and they updated our documents and updated some of the costs.
Yeah.
And we have 3 reserve studies now, one for, so they're integrated. Our roads plan is now in our reserve study. So if you look, and we updated them and they're online. So if you go to our webpage under resident resources, scroll down, it shows reserve studies, and there are the 3 reserve studies that have just been completed: roads, surf, mailboxes, right? And they're all there.
Sometimes they have their own reserve study.
It does, but it's a very, very short
Yeah.
reserve study.
Yeah.
You will see in front of you, I gave each of you a ranking and priority sheet for SERP. It says 2018 SERP ranking and prioritization. And on the top left, it says Reserve Study 2018 updated data. So all the descriptions in the column on the left-hand side are out of the 2008, you have in front of you, 2018, 19, and 20 in 3 pages. Now, the columns under, I've truncated the columns. I've actually, just to get it on one sheet so you could look at it tonight and we can talk about it. Security, safety, admin, golf are not there, but turf care is here. So if you, been a while, so I'll tell you, why don't you look at a document that we use. Here is an SOP, and you will find this SOP on 36. That's it, go to there. What is it, Eric? Page 36. There we go. All right, so if you go to that SOP and look at it, it is the standard operating procedure for a capital life cycle of a project. And if you flip to the back section, it has a ranking sheet, project funding, prioritization matrix.
39.
So, looking at the sheet we have, I've already sat, Eva and I have sat down together with safety, security, and then with maintenance and with turf care now. And we listed and looked at every one of their items on the sheet for 2018, 2019. We looked at 20, but I didn't ask them to give me a low, medium, and high. Their job is to be able to tell us what is the probability of failure, the impact probability, and either a low, medium, or high. And the comments you'll see on the right, in a lot of cases they've said this does not need to be replaced, defer it, and what year to defer it to. Some of them are, hey, this was sold, get rid of it, take it off the list. Some are notes to please evaluate, and they've ranked them low, medium, and high. When I finish doing this next week with Brian Krulak, admin, and accounting, and all departments have then ranked or have given us a low, medium, and high on all of the items in the reserve study, I'll sit down with Tony and Rick, and they will use the same matrix, but they'll do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the risk level the association's willing to accept if one of these items were to break? And then from there you can quickly see if it's looking at the chart, if it's a high, we say, hey, it's going to break, but they say we don't care, it's a 5, then it's an F, and we're not going to fund it. But if they say, we say, hey, it's going to break, and they go, it's an unacceptable risk, and the descriptions are here for what that description would have to be, then it's an A. And this will populate, become an A, and then when it's finished, we'll sort on the A's, B's, and C's and say, okay, which way do you want to prioritize? Here's your A, B's, and C's based upon the department heads, giving you probability of impact if it's going to fail or not, and then your decision on what's the risk that the association's willing to take. And now, of course, it's 5 times more money than you have. What do you want to make a decision on? Or maybe not. But that's the sheet, and that's how it's done, and it's moving along quite nicely.
I just wanted to mention, if you look at page number 44, we'll get to this in a bit, but page number 44 under SERP, you will see that our usable cash right now for SERP is $376,895. But if you will look at the list of things that are due to be replaced or repaired this year, it's
2 million.
2 million.
That's right.
Yeah, 2.2 million, so big variation, which
Now,
means somehow we've got to figure out, weed out the ones we need to weed out.
I think that we need, I agree with you, ma'am. I believe that I'm looking at a different world at this moment, and I'm not sure. There are a lot of items in here that our staff has said, well, because it's on a reserve study, but it's okay and we don't need to replace it. So I now will move, before we get to Tony and Rick, I will move those back to those years, and then this list will shrink. I cannot finish the next, one of my next items on here which is our budget assumptions,
Mhm.
until our attorney tells us what are the requirements from SB 6175. And when we had our attorney on the phone, I specifically said, I'm afraid I need that for budgeting for the association quicker than some of the other items. Because if there are components in that law that can tell us, we need to know that.
Exactly. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, was to let you know that there are some things that we have to know right away about. Yes,
I have
please,
another question.
Penny, yeah.
Given the vote in the SGM, does that have an implication on any of the decisions that you and your staff are making?
Yes, it does. It does change quite a few items in there. I'll give you some examples. You will see that I have a section in here, parks. So this year, what I decided to do, everything on here is surf. There's no roads. Everything is surf.
Got it.
So it's all capital equipment. But I think it'll be important for the association to say, this is how much is being spent on facilities, surf capital equipment, on turf care, on parks, on rec, on, here it is by department. So I broke it up by department, and I put in the parks and recs here. And because we did have in here some specific items that, in the reserve study, for example, rebuilding trails. And those items we ranked high because there's now a department for that, and it's a funded activity. But it says, for example, on the second page, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Playground need prioritization. Playground equipment replacement needs prioritization. All right, it's high. I know we have bad equipment, but I need prioritization. And so where we have trail repair, it says requires prioritization. Campground trails and roads it's rated as a high, but I need the prioritization. So we're saying it's there. That's how much money we've set aside for it. Which ones do you want to do this year, please? And so I would look to the committees that are going to be telling us through the board, here's our recommendation for priorities for rehabilitation of parks and rehabilitation of trails. The money is there, we rated it as high because the money is now there. If the money was not there, I wouldn't have rated it high, actually.
You're speaking of the SGM
The special measure that
assessment.
passed.
So the money isn't there yet, just so we know.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I want to make sure everybody knows it's not a little
Starting on
reserve
June
sitting
1.
out there. Starting June 1st, we'll start to collect the funds.
Before this measure went through, there were no funds for it. I could have rated it really high, but impact to the association would have been, a 5. Forget it, let it go. But now there's a department, and there'll be a requirement to expend the money in that department specifically for parks, trails, and rec. So therefore, I categorized everything in parks and trails and rec.
Thank you.
And we'll be able to track specifically each expense that is both capital and operations. Yes,
Okay,
Tom?
with the change and the number of questions that we will have with the new law coming in effect, when we look at this ranking and prioritization, if we defer something to 2020, in the past, all we did is just take it off and forget it, and we don't see it anymore.
Well,
We have years and stuff where we have not done anything with and not carried it over to the next year for doing stuff.
No,
that's not
it
true.
goes into a deferred list.
It goes into deferred, and so when they do the list, they gotta take everything that wasn't done and put it right back
Put it
in.
right back in. So that's why some of our years are 2.2 million or more, because for years we've been only doing a few $100,000 worth. That's why one year is like this coming year, or this year that we're in actually, is so high. Because a lot of these have been deferred.
What I'm asking though is, you indicated here as deferred, so how do they see that as being deferred?
That's our term for it, is it's deferred. But if it isn't dealt with, it's still in the reserve study as needing to be done. And so it shows up again. Now, the only thing that would change is if Mitch says, we've had an evaluation on this, we aren't gonna use it, so we take it off. Or we can send it out another 5 years instead of next year.
So we'll pull it out and put it back in the 2020 list or 2022 list. I'll take it out of here and put it back in there, and so when we do our next update, we'll give it back to them and say, this wasn't done this year, we
I
deferred it
didn't
to
know
them.
that part of it.
Yeah, we show where we
We don't,
deferred
it
it.
doesn't disappear, it just moves.
Sure looked like it disappeared.
Something, point of clarification,
Excuse me,
point of clarification.
yes,
Some things on surf did disappear.
Yes.
yes, they
Yes.
did, they did.
Barn
yes.
6 disappeared.
Barn 6, yes, but we brought it.
Yeah, we turned it into a it had no value, and so,
Okay, I'm just saying, it was on the reserve study.
that's right.
You're right
And
about
so
that,
was
that
the
last year.
rotunda on the reserve
Yes.
study. There are, I could give you. other
Things that we
Yes.
destroyed, things that we destroyed,
Or
Yeah.
things we decided had no value.
had no value, came
And
off
weren't
the
worth
list.
fixing.
Mhm.
That is correct, that is correct.
Because the
statement.
cost of fixing or repairing or replacing was so outrageous,
Well,
and
we
we
have
couldn't.
several things in those categories.
Yes, we do, yes, you're right.
I'm
So-
just trying to draw a point of clarification with what Tony's saying and what Mitch is saying. Everything wasn't deferred, some things were
Removed.
Yeah.
Well,
not
yeah,
under consideration.
I believe that we all jointly agreed on removing all of those.
I know, for the document of record,
You are correct,
Point.
you are correct. Things that we
Thanks.
destroyed, things that we said, we now zero your value out, and the SURF report, this reserve study only carries capital assets of value. It carries no assets of no value.
but realistically, for example, I'll carry one step further. The rotunda needs to have something done with it to be dealt with, and I don't believe it's on the reserve study any further.
It's no longer a capital issue.
No, but besides just tearing it down, it won't be a maintenance issue, will it?
It'll be an operational issue.
Okay.
It'll be
That's a good question, because I'm just asking, because I
Same
need
with Barn 6.
clarification. I think you have a good question on that, because it would seem to me that the site, I don't know if it has, you're saying it has absolutely no asset value. What about the Barn 7 site? Does it have no asset value?
Barn
What do we
7's
do if we decide to resurrect something? Is it,
then you create something. This
Okay.
list would not be for that. This list is for what you own. You don't own a building there, you have a foundation, but we see no value in the foundation because it couldn't handle the load of the building. So we decided the foundation has to come out before a new building could go in. At the rotunda, the only thing that's left is some of the foundations, but they wouldn't be used again. They would be cut off, and for that, I'm not creating a capital asset.
I guess what I'm saying though is realistically, from my perspective on the capital, if we were going to obsolete and remove the asset physically, then that would entail bringing it back to some course like it never existed previously, such as the rotunda, Barn 6, Barn 7. And those funds come out of the capital, come out of SURF.
We made the decision not to. We actually made the decision to not do that when we did the funding determination on those two buildings. Because we were not recapitalizing, we were not recapitalizing.
Okay. So anything we do with those sites in the future, what you're saying
To
is
create a new capital asset.
if we don't make an asset, if we, for example, if the county wants us to turn either one of those sites back to some kind of mitigated property or something, that's gonna be an operational expense, is that what?
I might go to UDR, and if I don't have the money and I come to SURF, we might come to SURF for it because it's where the pot of money is, and I have to argue it that way.
Okay.
but right now, I guess my rationale for it is, if, as I'm thinking through it, is it doesn't have a need to be repaired.
No.
Because it's down, and
No,
that's
right.
one of the aspects
You want
of
that?
why we have it
No.
on.
We argued or negotiated which bucket the funds are gonna come out of, but I just.
Can I go to the dump?
So whatever you do on barn 6, the foundation or whatever, it's going to be created as a new asset.
If there's an
Yeah, there's
asset, if there becomes an asset.
If it becomes
It becomes an asset.
Let's suppose that we take down Barn 6, and someone says, I want that ice ring to remain, and then put it back into service. In effect, we'd have to really rebuild the thing, and it would be a new capitalization action.
Right, I understand, I agree with that.
I think we are following general accepted principles of accounting here on this one.
If we make it a new park, then
That's right.
That's
Then
right.
we do that.
that's where I'm at.
All right, so we have a letter of no endpoint right now on the foundation of farms. Seven.
Seven, yeah,
No endpoint
for no cost, which is
for
good.
no cost.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, sorry.
No,
Disturb, I just
no,
wanted to clarify
I
some
think
of that
this is
stuff.
good conversation because it brought up some thoughts to me that I hadn't considered before, so.
So the reserve study, ma'am, as I said, it's on the web. It is available for everyone to look at, all three. We are going through the capital planning process right now. We'll continue to go through the capital planning process next with the most non-argumentative people in the entire world.
Not me, I'm not included in that.
I talked to Rick, it's like, okay, what non-epiphany are we having today?
I'm glad we're back together again.
I love you, man. So, but the budget assumptions become problematic until we have a reading from council, all right? And so that's where we sit on that. But I do have the budget, if I could, I'll just go segue into that, which is the next one. So you do have on page 40, 41, the 2019 general operating budget assumptions. And so they're more a list of questions very similar to last year. However, we've added some more items to it, we've subtracted some. And so there are questions on operations use income. If the SPM passes, if yes, then what do we need to do for budget for parks and the health club department in 2019? Well, now it's a special assessment. That answer is done. We know what the budget is going to be for 2019. It's now set. On marina and areas, the income, do we want, once we finish this work, to increase the marina slip rentals due to improved conditions? I think it is worthy of a conversation. I think we haven't increased the, we're at 100%. I think it's not unreasonable for the association to increase next year a certain,
Are you talking all slips, dry and wet?
Wet
or just
slips.
wet?
wet slips only.
Okay, because I,
We haven't done anything for the dry
unless we
slips.
do something about the dry slips, which are wet most of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't start approaching them with, because
wet
you're gonna
dry
have,
slips.
We're gonna get some pushback on that one.
I fully appreciate, some of the comments from the community about it's a moonscape. Yep, it is. And the county just listens to us and they go, that's right. And when you give us, and when we finally approve your new shoreline permit, which will include fines, then you can go ahead and repair your potholes and using fines, and that's what we put in this time. But until June 1, that won't happen. So, fair market, payroll, fair market wage, minimum wage is going up again in 2019. And so, this is the state of Washington. Thank you for flying airlines with the state of Washington. Our seasonal temp help laborers in accounting, we still do that. Clean Green program is opening up in May. And we're looking at our funding times, but that will be in the general manager's report tomorrow. Discussing it, we did set the dates for it. Security Pacific contract or utilities, we expect it to go up. We are going to get a hit on insurance increase, but we don't know how much. We don't know when. Not yet. Main pool, this is now a setup activity. Same with the adult pool. Wilson contract for migration. Special events, I do think that the conversation during the budgeting process should be, okay, we've tried going to special events every year with volunteers. How's it working? I think that that's a realistic question the board should be asking. How do you feel it's been working with volunteers? We gave up an FTE that did, amongst other things, the special events. And so we float back and forth between what we're doing. ACC consultant costs, we're doing well. I think that we'll have maybe 22 starts this year. And so, I understand. I'll talk about it tomorrow, but we did have a very successful, lengthy, long conversation with all of the main contractors in the valley off-site 2 weeks ago. Two significant managers from the county. Rich was supposed to be there as the chair of ACC, he was sick, so he was represented by Jessica and John Gordon and myself and a realtor. And we met for 4.5 hours. And the contractors didn't leave the room, they stayed. And one person said, well, this is what the county lets us do. And the county guy said, no, that's not what we let you do. That was really helpful. That was really helpful.
Okay, so I guess my question about that meeting, just not that it necessarily concerns finance, only insofar as if we really.
That's what we found out, that they think that they're gonna actually do 22 starts this year.
Okay, so
And then when
that's
I
how-
ran the numbers for, since we put the stormwater phosphorus mitigation plan in place, 53% of the starts have now used that plan.
Okay.
And so the plan's being more widely used than people had originally said, which was really a good thing. Now the county is asking us, and I'm thinking it's not a bad thing, with all the starts we're getting, should we now go in and do something very similar for other types of mitigation plans that all the different homes are being asked to put together? And so I'll probably come back to the finance committee during the course of the year and suggest that we consider doing other types of standardized plans for county approval that would make Sudden Valley much more economically feasible compared to other areas in the watershed, which drives up our home values. Emergency preparedness, they have told me that they're going to give us a budget again this year, and they said so last year, but then we took their budget away because they didn't come up with a spending plan. We will have mitigations again this year, and I've asked Lisa to look for a low-cost employee review software to expedite the employee evaluation process. And then the big elephant in the room is, what is SB 6175 going to do to us with requirements? Because there are operational issues in there.
Okay. Does anybody have questions about those or comments about these are the assumptions. We haven't even started to put a budget together yet, and I don't think we can really, I mean, you may have started. I know you have already. I know Jennifer. But not anything that we want to publish yet, because there's just too many questions still. So, but are there any other things that in reading this you think of, or just in the future that you think we need to address that have not been listed here? And this is operations, by the way. This is not to deal with capital yet.
So it's a living, breathing document. If you see something else comes up, we'll take the input. We'll need it. So that's what I have now. And with that, I believe we talk about our financials.
Okay, I'm going to check in with Colin again. Colin, are you still hearing us, reading us, have any comments?
I'm here, everything's fine, no comments.
Okay, thank you. That was short and sweet. He wants to move on. All right, so now you want to talk a little bit about our roads, but mostly a new item, which is about keyways.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
You had a handout.
I do. I don't have a handout. I have a
We have a discussion then.
I have a discussion.
Well, what are these things I should be handing out? What's this? This says finance.
Oh, that
committee
is
handouts.
our capital, our roads plan. That's our
Okay.
capital. Let me hand that out.
Okay.
I apologize. That is our, looking at our capital roads
I'll
plan.
set this down. Okay, what else?
I forgot that you had those, Carol.
Yeah, so Colin, we should keep one at the office for you that you could come and pick up. Or can we, is it in digital format that we can send out?
Colin, I can send it to you electronically.
That'd be great.
Okay, so what we're looking at, it says the 2016 to 2025 Road Rehabilitation and Culvert Capital Improvement Plan. So this was a 10-year plan that Wilson put together for us last year for the benefit of seeing all of the roads items in one spreadsheet. You may have even seen this already, but it's been updated, and that's what we're going over.
Okay, so unfortunately, the list that you have here does not have the secondary column in the back that I will send that out. It shows that we are out of money next year. All right, we go negative on roads in 2019. So as much as we've made fantastic headway, as you can see in 2018, we have our on-call engineering plan that's still funded, and bridge inspections this year. We are doing a road surfacing demonstration project that's already been approved, and the maps.
Explain demonstration.
Oh, well, I don't like the title, Melanie loved the title. We are micro sealing the many sections inside the community. Roads that will benefit from that. So in Gate 1, entrance to Marina, Gate 2 up to Marigold, Polo Park, and the entrance to Gate 9, Gate 13 and Polo Parkway, other sections inside Gate 13 and Gate 9, those are all being micro-sealed this year.
And this is because those are the areas where we're losing the surface and we.
Those areas are being stabilized. We don't want them to degrade further, and also some of those roads were just rebuilt and we're now going to protect them. So we are going in and micro-sealing those roads, and this is going to be, as her phrase was, a demonstration showing the community this is how it actually works. So this slurry goes down and it's ready for paint within a couple of hours, which is pretty amazing.
It is amazing. Okay, good.
So,
we've allocated $200,000
We
this
did.
year.
We actually allocated 220,000. 20,000 is contingency, and then we have pothole repairs. I'm not looking for delamination actions. We're looking more for potholes at Swallow, Kansas. We have a couple of them that are around. Our fast project plans, which if you look down in the next line, Culvert 447, it wasn't on the plan to get, when we did the original 10-year plan 4 years ago, but it turned up last year finding a 150-foot long buried culvert in Gate 13, and it had no drainage tilt to it, and it was damaging homes. So that is now, it was designed, it's now scheduled for construction this year. So you can go down the list and you can see the projects that we're actually in construction on this year, and the ones that we would be putting into design this year for construction last year. The ones that are in construction this year were designed last year.
Right. So just to reiterate, because I think you twisted your words, we
Did I?
design this year, construct next year.
We always design.
Always design one year, construct the next.
That's correct. The last line in here is ditches, culverts, and swales. And this is from a 2016 special general meeting mandate. You'll see that in 2018, there's $150,000. That's because we underspent last year. We could not keep staff here because of the wage we were offering. They were walking off the job and getting jobs downtown that paid more flipping burgers. So we saved the money and have reapplied it to the funds that we have this year. So that money got fenced, just like we would have to fence any money on the measure that was passed this year. You fence it and then you apply it to the following year and continue doing the same job. However, I feel bad. We go negative in 19. And so
We don't have anything to demonstrate
It doesn't show it on here, Mitch.
No, it doesn't.
I think this particular one
This is
doesn't have that last one.
it doesn't have the last graph on it.
Yeah, there is, we're in the negative several $100,000 next year, and it just keeps getting worse. There's no catching up.
There is no catch up on it.
We've got, and in 2023, I think it's 2023, if you'll recall, we have the bridge that needs to be replaced. And that's over
820,000.
830,000 or something of that nature, 828,000. That is on, I can't see what line this is. It's in 2023
I see it.
though. And it's in, that one was one we talked about funding with the capital holding reserve fund. As a possibility, we're hoping we'd have enough in that then to at least take a big bite out of it.
It's possible, but if you don't, we've been very aggressive in repairing the culverts and now integrating roads into this plan. So you're doing roads and culverts, so you don't have to go back and tear up a road that you just rebuilt to go fix a culvert. So it's an integrated plan now. But it will come to a screeching halt if the board, if the board does not take action on roads. And that's why we had pushed so hard to have roads done in last year, which failed at 58.2 or so. But we are out of money on roads in next year. I will send this sheet out first thing in the morning to everyone so you can see this. And then I'll also, because a lot of the community is watching, I'll have the sheet posted somewhere with it on the web for people to go to it.
Okay, how are we gonna know where that is?
It'll be on the web and they'll tell you, go here and look at this link.
Yes,
So, help out my memory here from the
Okay.
senior citizen, please. So we did the SDM and we were gonna do a loan that was gonna take care of the roads last July.
last
For the
year,
SDM last
we had the
July.
parks and trails and we had the roads,
We
yes.
talked about the SGM last July, which
Oh.
was a full revitalization.
Oh, revitalization, yes, okay,
Yes,
that was
revitalization.
surf and roads,
I
yes.
know, but part of that was
$1.7 million for roads.
for roads.
Mhm.
That is correct,
So
1.7.
we have that plan, and then we took that plan and revised it based on the funds for this year.
We did some of the micro sealing this year, and so the plan stands. If you remember, Rick, on that plan, we had 1.7, so it can be done twice in a 10-year period. It was doing 74% of all roads now, and then 100% of all roads the second time. And it was because the other 24% of the roads were in good shape right now.
Right. So what this represents is what we went to after we couldn't go with that loan.
Well, this
Based on the
actually,
current
I
revenue,
think,
based on the dues,
yeah,
right?
I think this is more robust, and if I could, I think when we put it into the revitalization, that was strictly to do the resurfacing. We didn't address all of the other things and the fact that the roads budget that we had planned, because remember,
Oh,
when we created a roads plan, in I wanna remember, or culvert plan, I'm
Culvert
sorry, in
plan,
2014.
2013.
2014, somewhere around there,
Mhm.
it was culverts, there was no
Right.
paving included.
I remember we had two separate.
That's right.
And then last year, Pug Edmonds, who was on the finance committee and very involved in roads, worked with Melanie and Wilson Engineering to come up with a combined plan. Now, at the SGM, the only thing we were looking at for that was just the paving piece of it.
Okay, so that didn't have the rest.
That
of it.
didn't have all these other components in it.
So that's why this.
That's
may
why
be-
this one is more robust, yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
that's
just
why
trying
it
to
was more
understand that.
expensive.
We
yeah.
had to go ahead and consolidate them.
Now, we did have roads measured at the AGM
Yeah,
also.
the AGM.
Yes, we did, we had
$3
this,
million, wasn't it?
yes, after the SGM failed, we came back with both parks and roads as separate items. The roads at that point, by then, we had the 10-year plan from Wilson. It's required in our bylaws that we have a 10-year engineering study done every year for our roads. And I don't know the last time it was done, but this was done last year, and that's when we finally got an idea of what it was gonna cost us over the course of 10 years, which is why we put that up as a measure
At the AGM.
at the AGM. So that was, to my way of thinking, that was the complete road requirement at
Okay,
that
that's
time.
what I was trying to
I
gather.
thought I
Different
wanted-
renditions,
yeah,
where we
yeah,
were at, so.
Yeah,
And that wasn't passed, so now
Well,
we're here.
that one did get 58.2% as opposed to the
Right,
SGM, which
so-
was 48.
yeah.
Obviously, it may warrant further discussion of how we deal with those.
Mhm.
I think so,
Yeah.
because otherwise it'll be cash in on dues, and that's the work you'll do, and you'll do no more. And
Which is
so
a very expensive way to try to do projects.
We'll go back to what broke, go fix it, forget anticipatory repair.
Right, I can see some lengthy discussions coming forward.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll get the updated list out to everyone, including posting it to the community by tomorrow morning.
That'd be really good. Thank you very much, I appreciate that. All right, so, unless there's any other items under continuing business.
Well, so now it's keyways.
Oh, yes, that's right, okay, keyways, which you don't have a handout for, but we can talk to it, huh?
No.
I keep not wanting to talk about it.
Well, if he doesn't have a handout,
I don't have a handout.
just give us an overview of what the keyway situation is.
How many keyways in parking bays, otherwise known as access easements of varying types, do you think we have in the association?
70.
Okay, 287. So,
287, I couldn't believe.
287. So when the Horton, who was the company, did the platting of the entire mapping of the association back in the 80s, he did something that company did something kind of odd. Divisions 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 32, each on their individual deeds, if you have a keyway, you have an equal and undivided ownership of the keyways vested in all adjoining lots. The balance of the association's 35 platted divisions do not. And so the question of ownership of the keyways has never been totally resolved to anyone's satisfaction between multiple years. And the documentation goes back to 1982, right? So rather than say, okay, here's this one, here's this one, here's this one, here's a complete breakdown of all 287 that was made in the 1980s, discussing where they are, what the conditions were at that time. What is known is that they were not constructed complete. And so when you look at our keyways and our parking bays, the majority of them are crushed rock, and they were not ever brought up to a paved surface. And they are a bone of contention to all of the owners throughout the entire association. That could be an area of off-street parking, but it's also an area where people call up and say, I want you to come in and repair my keyway, my parking bay. And one of the resounding themes of all the legal memos that we have is you touch one, you touch them all. And so I don't think it's within my sphere to go and start a hornet's nest by saying, I think we'll go start one repair this year and then you've opened up a floodgate. What I do think is that if we're going to take on the subject of roads, I would recommend that the Finance Committee begin an open dialogue or a continuing dialogue of, do you want to address the question of parking bays and keyways as also a subject of roads and roads repair throughout the entire association? When the association was put together, we did not have sidewalks for a reason, and streetlights, and side streets for parking on. And so you'll notice that most people try parking in our ditches, which does not help our rainwater very well. We have an opportunity, if we so chose, to put together a plan to use some of our common areas for off-street parking. We could make parking lots throughout the association on some of our common areas. That's just one strategy. But the parking bays, all 287 of them, of these easements, are an unresolved burr under the saddle of, incomplete road work that stemmed from the default of the original corporation that developed Sudden Valley and the lawsuits that followed, and it just was an incomplete action. It was never resolved completely, and you get 3 lawyers, you'll get 3 points of view. So I think it's something that you might consider taking on as a discussion point, especially given that the world may have changed. And so if we're going to take on roads, I think it would do the association well to take on the subject of keyways.
Question about the keyways that are owned on the deeds by the individuals that live around those keyways.
That's correct.
Would that be any additional complication in us repairing something that is owned by individual members?
Well, it's really
Because that's something that our association isn't allowed to do.
So that's a really great question. So I'll just give you a couple of different strategies that have.
Hi, did we disconnect? Hello? Oh, okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker again. Hold on.
The homework we assigned to Colin.
Yeah, so needs to have that back next week?
I
Is
need
that
that
right?
back in Colin next week. It's 287 pages. So the question then becomes,
We're kidding, Colin.
no, actually.
He doesn't know.
In theory, let's say we take on the subject of them because they were never constructed completely, and you make it, we go into a keyway that is shared by 5 houses, and say, would you like to own this keyway? According to your deed, you currently own it. Would you like to own it and keep it? If we fix it, we give it back to you and say, in perpetuity, it's yours to now keep up. Period. There will be no further maintenance on the association's part. To the other people who are not on deeds, and they want to say, I don't really want to be the owner of this, great, that is common off-street parking. From now on, forevermore, if we have to repair it. Or you can accept ownership of this, maintenance responsibility, not ownership of the road, but ownership of maintenance responsibility. That's a negotiation. I mean, there's so many different ways to do this. Those are just 2 of probably dozens of other things that we could probably lay out and try to get people to decide if they want to buy in, if they want to own, if they want their own off-street parking as a cluster parking lot, or if they say, no, we don't care, and then everyone else can park there, which of course would be very important for us to know if they turn down ownership. It's like, sorry, nothing I can do about it if
I
someone
have
else
to say,
parks
this
there.
sounds like an overwhelming project that needs to come from some kind of task force willing to take it on.
I believe that it needs to be taken on. I do believe it needs to be. It's festered. I bet Penny knows about it. Yep. I know that Larry knows
She
about
may
it.
be withdrawing her name tonight.
Yeah. See, if you've been here for
thought
a
we got
long
a chair.
time, you eventually realize, why is this thing not being maintained? Some people have, some owners, some members, have actually tried to take ownership by using them, and we've had to say, I'm sorry, that's common property. You may not, you know. That
I've heard that argument even in my neighborhood.
Yes, you must remove your hot tub, take out your power, you can't have it, it's not your property. And they go, but no one else is using it. I know. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that, but you must. And so, what should we do? So if we're going to take on roads, I would suggest that this is a topic that I think that the community would benefit from, many people having many headaches, discussing it and coming up with a proposal. That's my topic on.
Could I ask a question of you?
Yes,
I know this is
my name is not Colin. I am.
No, this is bubbled to the top of your list right now, and so I guess what I'm asking you is how, in the scheme of everything else that's going on, how high a priority does this hold, and why? What is our motivation to start now when we've got all this other stuff happening?
We have 45 years of roads that have continued to deteriorate, and these roads that were put in, that were part of the road system, that were never completed, have deteriorated exponentially faster and have caused greater problem. And some of them impact culverts and swales and drainage. If we are going to look at, when I look at the magnitude of the problem of roads, and if the association said we're going to take on roads, then I would think that it would not be a difficult thing to take the 287, and some of them probably are not going to be owned because they might be on common property now, and so that's a different issue. But I think you could prioritize them along with roads, and then as we do road work, do keyway work and parking bay work in the same manner.
And that way it would be done when a crew is in position. Are they going to require, if we're going into resurface, for instance, in a particular area, does a keyway have to have additional work probably in order to prepare it for a resurfacing? I mean,
It's a very good observation, and probably in most cases the answer would be yes.
That's what I'm thinking. Okay.
Yes, but it is an economy of scale. If we're going to bring in crews to repair roads, well, then that would be the time if we decide to do parking bays and keyways, do them at the same time. Do not bring heavy equipment back into that area to tear up our roads to then do the parking bays and the keyways at a later date.
But this, all the roads and the culverts have done a great effort over the last few years to survey those and encompass those and rate those and all those things. I seriously doubt that we've done any survey of any of the keyways.
This is actually a complete and extremely thorough survey of every one, right down to its location in every plat.
So Wilson's,
No, this is not, I have no idea
40 years old.
what company did this.
Oh.
Yeah, this is old.
Right. This is,
In fact, look at how it's been created. I mean, this is in a different.
this was a dot
This
matrix
is like.
for
Not
everybody.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
And this might have even been before dot matrix printers, okay? So,
I guess.
undeveloped, installed, used by lots 23, installed, used by this lot, installed, used, installed.
All right.
We need
So,
a task force.
let's-
I guess I
Yeah.
can see a desire, and it makes
That would
sense,
be for us.
probably financially, if we're gonna address the issue at some point in time, to make it comprehensive and put it in with the roads plan. But it
Wouldn't be
sounds to me
difficult.
like it's a significant effort
Yes.
just to get your arms around this piece before you, to put it encompassing with.
Eventually someone's gonna have to put their arms around it. And if we're gonna do roads, the time is now. That would be, I believe, the devil would be in the details, but the timeliness would probably be appropriate.
So is that
I'm-
something that we
okay.
need to decide on tonight?
No, because here's
Can you
what
vote?
here's
No,
what,
I can't.
Eric and I have been having a little side conference here, I apologize, but, much as I think this is important, and I'm gung-ho on at least getting more information about it and doing some research, this is not, I don't think, something that is, I could say as a finance committee that, yeah, we could consider it, but I think we need a task force to do the research and to figure out what is, how much is it gonna cost, what are the problems that we're facing, who owns, who doesn't own, what's disappeared as a keyway, what new might have, I mean, I don't think that's a finance committee effort. I think we should definitely consider whatever results come from a task force, but I would ask the board to, if they wished, that's my recommendation. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I think the board needs to find some people that can spend some time going out and doing it.
Well, ma'am, I think that's fine. I bring it to finance as a starting point for discussion.
Well, we discussed. Who else has an idea? Okay, yes, in a moment, but let me get there.
Well, I guess, and that's where I was headed with it, is that I can see that a task force can do some things and gather information, but realistically, it takes engineers or survey type people to walk and look and see the current status and rate those things, just like the gigantuous effort that we did on our roads and culverts, which has been a very time-consuming and cost money. And right now, we have no funding allocated any place to go take a look at all of those things. But a task force might be able to start gathering some information, but then we have to come up with funding.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking that these keyways are the other 12 miles that we lost. Remember? We had 52 miles of roads.
Just,
No.
don't go there.
Just thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay,
yes.
Sasquatch lives there.
my input is, because the finance committee has been the primary location of all of the roads assessment, culverts assessment, yada, 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 that the board would need to continue to have their input, even if there is a task force.
Oh, I would agree with that.
I would urge that whoever is now in charge of the
Don't
roads.
over here.
Oh, okay. Larry, that's part of the problem. Guess who's in charge of roads?
The treasurer. I think having Penny joined is such a cool.
And we hire a pug.
But I'm just saying, is this really something that an inexperienced person is going to be? I think the only thing you could do is drive around and check out this list, and I'm not sure it would be even,
And Pug
what
worked,
is it going to tell
yeah,
us?
Pug worked a lot with Wilson.
Wilson did
And
the work.
And it's gonna have to be something like that.
Yes.
I think we're gonna
But
have to come up
But
with-
I do agree with Mitch, is that if we're gonna go in there and do the roads and bring this equipment in, we need to look at these places at the same time and prioritize these things, say, okay, in 2019, these are the things that we want to get done for these places.
At the very least, it seems like you would want a map
Yeah.
of the roads, if you've got priorities on roads, then map what are the keyways that are in those areas.
Match it all up.
So,
Match it all
you know,
up.
if there are 10 in that area and there's 277 somewhere else, you know, or is it
That's right.
250 in there, and so therefore, that would, I would think, influence the,
I think you have a volunteer to it.
Well, I think that this really isn't a part of this meeting anymore. We'd probably
Yeah, I think
digress
we
to-
digress. Let me think on it.
But I wouldn't want to be the
And
person in
I-
charge of
I-
negotiating with each of those 60 or 70
No.
keyways
No.
of,
That's a different issue.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
And I don't know how you can do the paving without.
That would be,
that ahead of
actually,
time.
we do that all the time. All right, we actually have easements, but that's a different topic. That is actually surmountable, fairly easy. The last item I had, which I asked to bring up quickly, was the topic of water lilies, an invasive species in Lake Louise. We have received a request from Lake Louise Condominium Association, which is interesting because once before someone complained from Lake Louise Condominium Association. One really liked the water lilies, and the rest now are saying, we would appreciate it if you would please get a permit and neutralize the water lilies, and which is possible to do. And so it is it's an operational activity. But it's approximately $3,800 plus some staff effort, a permit and specific chemicals. It will neutralize it for 5 years. And I actually think it's a good idea to do. So I don't have this on your agenda. It is not a capital issue. It is a UDR issue or an operations, and I don't have that in my budget. And so I would be going to UDR. I am bringing it to the board tomorrow. And I'm probably going to ask the board for directed permission to proceed, because I would have to go for permitting on May 1. And I would get the permit probably by June 1, and I would want to neutralize them as early in the season as possible.
Before they get too big?
That's correct.
Okay,
So,
that's fine. So you're just giving us a heads up that you're headed that direction?
yes, ma'am, I am. Penny?
there's lots of water lilies and stuff in the big lake as well.
Not my problem.
On the shoreline.
Yeah. So we do not own water. We own waterfront. And so I have to go to the owner of the water and ask the Department of Natural Resources for this. And talked to EJ earlier today. Trust me, no one's going to object with the destruction of these, because it will definitely lower phosphorus levels. So we'll go for it.
Okay.
That's all of us.
Okay, well, except that Eva's going to talk a little bit about Stevens, so,
Okay, thank you. I just want to look at the balance sheet, I just want to make one comment.
okay, that's on page 42?
Correct. Yes, sorry. One of the things I noticed today, actually when we go for it, there's $3 difference between net assets and the total member equity. It's just a rounding error because, you know, things are in cents and it's rounded. So I made a correction, but it was too late to reprint.
Okay.
So I just want to kind of point it out.
Okay, so this is under net assets towards the bottom of the page.
Correct, the one
Member
is
equity.
12,977,30, 933, and the other one says 12,917.
She's chasing $3.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, I noticed it, and they have to balance, the balance sheets do balance.
got it, okay, all right.
The, on page 43, I have my notes, so see notes. Let's see, what I have here. If you look at the section where it says other income for $71,075, what it kind of combines, because it's normally not that high, is 40,000 came from the lot sales,
Oh, yeah.
And 20,600 came from compliances and fees and fines. So that's where it kind of, and then there was another, the 9,000 is about the normish, so that's, I just want to kind of point that out, that's one of the things that stood out.
Okay.
So if we, I can slow down, I guess, I'm just like running through that.
So this is other income?
Take your
Pardon?
time.
This was the other income, that was the lot sales, and what was the other thing?
The compliance, fines, and fees,
Oh, okay.
so which is good. Yeah. And I'm gonna have these out to you guys. And then go that direction. Yep. On this particular one,
This is substitution for page.
44.
Page 44, which I was referring to earlier.
Yes.
My number didn't change, so that.
The numbers don't change. What was not on this one, as I noticed, is that the dues received, which is right below, like if you look,
Yep.
and that's all it is this, I just want to make sure, and again, like it's, that, this particular one, I did want to reprint it, because to show that the dues are in there, it's just, when I printed it out there, like when I sent it out earlier, it didn't.
Didn't print, I didn't even notice that.
So the little things like that, that once you slow down and you look and go, oh, why is this not here?
Something's not right. Okay, good.
So we'll kind of go through that.
But the numbers at the bottom don't change, so
No.
we've got the balances,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
And then I didn't make any comments on the other pages, but if you go to page 48, which is operations income statement.
Okay.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention, if you guys were noticing like the difference, I like on the reserves about the cash part, there is about $100,000 difference, and I just wanted to mention that what it was is that it was from where's my notes on this? There was a difference on the barn 6, which is the number 9717.05. It's $85,000 less than it was previous month, and it's just because all the invoices coming in and stuff like that. And then also that we added barn 8 stairs, which is the 9718.02, which is the 25,000. That's what kind of equates around the roughly the 100,000 difference from the previous month.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about the expenditures for 2019. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that just kind of compare it to previous month and see if there's any huge jumps and differences to kind of identify them. And so this way,
That helps, yeah.
it's kind of, you can see where, why it's less or more and stuff like that.
Well, we do have don't we have the capital reserve update? Yeah, but I mean, that gives us a lot of that information
Okay.
as well, so
Okay.
that's good. I mean, that's kind of why
You're
we
holding
have this.
133,000 in there.
So I was gonna say, I probably gonna have too much information.
Yeah, no, you're good, you're good. This was something that Rick and Tony wanted to know, is how do I know any month what cash is
Oh,
there,
there you go,
how much
yeah.
we spent and
Yeah.
all that, which is why that page 72 was put together, which was all of the various expenditures for SERP, so, and other accounts. Okay, good. All right, and you had something else on which statement was it? Page 48, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
What I just wanted to kind of mention is that on, there was a little jump on the other professional services, which is kind of like halfway through,
Mm-hmm.
where it says total contract for professional services is $12,640. A portion of it was,
I don't see that one, where is it?
it's the one that's in.
Oh, over here. Got it, better worse, it's 12, 640,
So
okay.
the professional services include, the services like my services, also the gym, and there's also a maintenance consulting that was in there. The other thing is that, so that's what we're, if it's off a little bit, that's what it is.
It's just it's an
It's-
unexpected
yeah,
expense.
yeah, it's a little
But we're still
higher.
managing within the
Oh,
total
yeah.
budget.
And that's the thing, it is the beginning, it's just the first, 3 months of the year, so the budget will change and it'll kind of balance itself out. Just doing that. A lot of times, things are showing up more at the beginning and the revenue starts to generate and it kind of offsets it and stuff like that. So I just wanted to kind of point out, anything that kind of stood out. And that's the main ones for me. The rest of them, they're pretty standard. All the departments are quite comparable to the budget, and like I was saying earlier, it's beginning of the quarter, or beginning of the year, the first quarter, so they're not going to be following it to the T, but as the year progresses, things will adjust accordingly.
Okay, yep, definitely. The only thing I asked, or I had a question about is I noticed that in the, as we get into the, over to the first page where I noticed it, when we get, I think it's in here, page number 65, where we're starting to do the, oh, I know why, okay, maybe not. In pools and health and club and parks, what was our budget? We didn't really
No,
have
we
a budget.
don't. What it is that
Yeah,
I printed everything out. This is something we set up that once the ballot, once the votes were in and it did pass to activate it. So
good,
that's what
so
we
this
did.
is perfect, okay,
Yes,
good.
it's all set up, ready to go. And
Okay, good. And we
So-
didn't anticipate spending anything on a UDR, so that also would not have any
Yeah.
kind of budget. All right, good. Now I understand. It makes perfect sense now. Okay, perfect.
Can I just
Yes,
ask you
yes,
a
please.
question? I just want to make sure that I understand these reports. So like on page, and maybe it's earlier too, but on page 47, the top of the page, it says 2018 March actuals, and then it says 2017 month to date.
That's a typo.
Is that
That's
just a
just
Yeah.
typo?
2018.
Yeah, we need to change
I didn't know whether it was, we were
Template.
comparing your,
Yeah.
Not on that sheet, I just noticed that.
got it,
Which one?
okay.
Look at
On
page
page
number.
42. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah, you might
carries-
just want to go through the templates and make sure
Yeah,
that they've
I'll
all
make
changed
sure.
to 48. I think Jennifer was in a hurry when she was getting ready to go on
I
the
think
break.
because the audit, everything's kind of, we're
Yeah,
reflecting
she
also
had a lot
in
going
December,
on.
and then
Yeah.
we had the 3 months just to kind of quickly do the financials and stuff like that, so I think
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
a little thing like that.
So I'm just checking the lots report. And,
Shows that we're up.
yeah. Yeah,
So we still have 8 that are waiting to transfer
okay,
to county.
okay.
And we probably will be, that I can see right now, we'll probably be taking 3. I know of 3 that are coming back, so the list begins again.
Mhm, okay. So we're right now at 3152 for
Which
total
is
lots.
19 higher than it was a while ago.
Yeah, well, it's like 11 higher than 2 months ago, so, yeah.
Total, that 19 brings in just over $20,000 a year in perpetuity.
That's great, that's nice. All right, good. And, does anybody have any questions for April while she's here?
Do you want to do the capital report, guys?
Yeah.
Page 72. Maintenance building roof replacement, project closed, project's finished, payment. We're returning to almost $1,600 in contingency back. Golf carts capital lease is coming up, and this is our last year for them. They're in pretty good shape. I think we can go for 2 years without new ones.
Yeah, so we'll own them, and we'll be able to keep them for as long as we can keep them running, well, or decide to replace them, so, whatever. Okay.
I think the next ones, that in a couple years from now, should be electric, and we should have them on solar power, but that's down the road. I'm serious.
Oh, look at Tony.
I'm serious. And so you can, Tony, that's so you can run behind it by pushing it.
Guy runs an outfitted with GPS with it, so.
Oh, do you get lost on the back nine?
Surprisingly, people do get lost.
I'm sure they do, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll have, you've heard of Where's Waldo, we're gonna have the Where Tony cartoons or something.
So if you build a nice shed for them, then I can see electric carts, but
Yeah, you'd have to have them covered, there's no way you
Okay.
can do them outside.
Clubhouse retaining wall is in, the design is complete. I sent the design out as you requested to Rick and Tony and Carol, and they accepted the design, and so it is now off to the county to get a permit, and off to an independent estimator to get an independent estimate.
do you see that price going up?
I'm not willing to speculate on this one now. It
Did it
was,
go to RAM too?
what's that?
Did it go to the contractor too?
It'll go to RAM. RAM bid, all right, there were 3 contractors that bid. We put RAM on hold for a year, and so I think we give RAM first option to bid, but we still have to have an independent estimate, so we know, if we know we're getting the right price.
But it hasn't gone to RAM yet.
No, it has not gone to RAM yet. Pool renovation design is proceeding, I see no issue with that. The software, maintenance vehicles, we're gonna be finishing up. The last one just came in, and the salt spreader, I think, is finished, and we'll be able to close that off. They all ran under.
Just a question on the pool renovation.
Yes, sir.
Is it gonna be, with the SGM being passed, is the pool gonna be open this summer?
Yes, it will, but not until mid-July, both pools. I looked at the, according to, I believe that we had, the main pool fence replacement was scheduled in 2019 for $20,004. That's how much it had in the reserve study. But if we're going to jackhammer out all that concrete, I'm thinking we want to consider moving that fence up and doing it this year instead of 19. So I'll be talking to the contractor about an added alternate estimate. Unless you have an objection, I think it's a wise move to do. Barn 6, demolition, sprung structure. The projects are proceeding. I'm meeting with the project manager tomorrow morning. We're meeting for about an hour and a half to go over their monthly reporting. They gave me back an earned value metric and a percentage, Rick, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't recognize a percentage for earned value. I want to see a metric on it. You know, 1.0 above or below. And so we're going to meet tomorrow morning. And the barn 8 stairs is in design. I don't have a date for it yet.
You have a date on the barn 6?
No, I don't yet. No, I don't. I did confirm, we did get into a correct contract with Big Top on purchasing. There is a change, however. It was an interesting change. If you remember, when we were moving it over to Area Z, we had a massive rainwater area that we were going to have to put in, and it was like $45,000 for the rainwater management. And the county is backing away from that, and they're going to let us go to French drains on the side of the tent. So we'll be buying an extra piece of fabric to move the water to the French drain, and then taking it out and putting it out in the field. And they're going to let us do that, and that's going to be a massive savings. Probably about massive. I think about $10,000 savings. That's a lot more. On the roads. They're all active right now, and I see no changes. Everything that we have flagged is proceeding on budget and on schedule or under budget. And so I'm not seeing any problems with the construction, the scheduling. The bids are not starting yet. Road surfacing bids are not starting. I still have Gate 28 hazard evaluation on hold. We did get everyone to sign the culvert 447 design. You were asking earlier, how do you work on someone's property? So on the culvert 447 design, we had to go on people's property, and so they had to give us sign off, allowing us to be their agent and work on their property, which is how it's done. So we did get 4 homes to sign off on that. So there is no issue on that. Hazard tree removal, it proceeded well. We got our work done. And the board approved $34,000. We've paid $31,140. So our contingency stayed good at 3,000, and closing the job, the contingency goes back to UDR. And Area Z mitigation is proceeding, and when June comes around, we already have the plan for where our maintenance people will use our front loader to scrape soil, and then we will rototill and put in the amendments of the organics to finish killing off the contamination below grade. And I believe that we will finish that project this year.
So will we be done with mitigation?
Yes, I believe so. Area Z
That's
is,
awesome.
Area Z will be probably finished by the end of this year. 30 years.
Hallelujah.
That's the end of our report.
I just wanted to call everyone's attention on page 44, go back to 44.
You like that page.
I do. This is a good informational page, really is. But we've not had this before because we didn't have a loan before, but it mentions on here the loan funding that we've received for the SERV projects that we're working on. The pool and the marina and so forth, and also anticipated loan payments. So just to let you know, those are in our reports. Those are not hard to find if you're trying to keep up with that sort of thing. So that was added into the capital reserve funds. Yes.
Just ask a follow-up question with this.
Yes, please.
On the retaining wall for windward, is that being permitted?
No, I'm not going to permit that one. I think I'm going to be able to do that one much easier. So I'm waiting. I want to see how this one goes. I believe that the windward one, from our conversation, that one's not. There's no 150-foot issue to a stream or to a water area. We don't have those kind of problems. Not like this one.
I agree.
Yeah, this one will fly. This was the challenge. You know, and that they required a full-on design, environmental design, soil, civil. I wasn't going to fight them. It wasn't worth the fight. We have bigger fish to fry.
All right. Any other questions or concerns? How about you, Colin?
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. And then we're going to go to, hold on, we're going to go to member comments and questions. So, any member comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of very small ones. Regarding the ADA door, is that going to the board tomorrow?
Yes, sir, it is. It's on the agenda.
Okay, it is on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
And tiny question. The patrol car that got driven into a ditch, how's that coming along? Has it
It's
been
being
repaired?
driven tonight. It was completely paid for by the company that drove it into the ditch. We didn't pay them anything.
Perfect, thank you. I just hadn't heard.
Yeah, the current, the other car that all our, we've collected all funds on all cars.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
If anybody behind me, I'll defer to that several. Okay, in the minutes, there's on page 2 of your minutes, it says, the first change order of the committee will look for the sprung structure, and it says the bank has no issue adjusting the loan to accommodate this change. Are we going to increase that loan amount?
No, Linda, there was an agreement on the scope of the work, and so we cannot change scope without the bank giving us permission to change the scope. We decided to go ahead and add $30,000 to the job, not install it at Barn 6, but install it there. And if you remember, we went through a table on the cost savings. It was in excess of $100,000. Go and install it directly at Area Z. And so we did, but we wanted the bank's permission, and they granted.
It just says no issue adjusting the loan, but I understand
Loan
what you're
scope.
saying. I wasn't here for that meeting, so that's my problem. The other thing on that in the meeting, it talks about the clearance lot auction results. I thought that income was supposed to go back into density reduction,
Yes.
but it's not.
No,
in-
I saw that and it will be adjusted for April.
Okay, and.
Except for the dues. the prepaid dues go into dues, but the actual cash, the 94, plus the two ULIDs goes to density reduction.
That's what I was wondering, because there was no increase. The other thing on that page 44 is there's no, we said we're gonna take the 25K for the stairs on there. That's not referenced anywhere as an expenditure against density reduction? Or is that money, the 25K, gonna move over to SURF?
We have nothing to transfer against right now.
Okay, it's not in there, and although it's kind of a committed thing. The other thing that's missing from page 44, and maybe we haven't had any, but I can't believe that given the election, there's no additional transfer fees received in the capital holding reserve. That's empty also. There's no amount in there for,
Capital Reserve Holding Fund?
yes, there should be, it says transfer fees received 1/4 of 1%, there's nothing in there.
On page 44.
Yeah,
I'm looking at $133,000.
you must be looking at a
That's the
different sheet.
available cash.
That's the available cash, I'm looking at the line item, if
Oh, that's good.
it's blank. And I know we had lots of new.
It's actually, transfer fees were 45,799. So again, her sheet didn't print out properly for this, so she printed out the handout, so you now have it.
Okay, better, thank you. Yeah, because it's all blanks, and I heard that I know that it was said that there were some corrections, and I just wanted to look at those other ones, and that's all. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Pictures.
Okay, is there any other business to bring before the committee? I will,
Welcome.
yes, Colin? I'm hearing you. I'm hearing noise. Okay, all right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ah, very good. Moved by Tony and then seconded by, all right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good fast meeting.
Thank you, Colin. Oh, absolutely. Oh, no problem. Thank you very much. It was great to have you on. Thanks, bye.
Get your homework done.